Welcome to the Slow Camp Coaching video. We're going to cover a lot of things here, so pay attention, and hopefully this will help make your camp experience the best it can possibly be. The first thing we're going to talk about is riding in pace lines, and we're going to practice this starting the very first day on the bike on Saturday. We're going to break up into small groups and practice riding both in single pace lines and rotating pace lines. Now the single pace line is used when you have a group where there might be disparity in ability levels, so some people are stronger than others. You might have a headwind, you might have a slight uphill, but it's a time when one person will take a longer pull and then they will pull off to the side, and then the next person will take a longer pull, and it could be anywhere from 5-10 seconds, 20-30 seconds, up to several minutes, depending upon who's with you and how strong people are. But it gives a long rest then to the rest of the people in line so that they're ready to take their pull once they get to the front. You always pull off into the wind, so in this case the person pulled off to the left, meaning the wind's coming slightly from the left. It might be a headwind left or might be a crosswind left, but in either way it's going to be coming from the left in this time. The person looks over their shoulder to make sure there's no traffic behind them, and then they flick their elbow, so in this case their right elbow, indicating that they want the person from behind to come up on their right hand side. And then you pull off to the side just slightly, and then you start slowing down. You do not start slowing down until you're actually pulled off the front. And you don't move really far into the roadway either. You move just far enough to the left to allow the person to be able to pass you on your right, and then you shelter the whole line as you drop back along the line until the last person comes by. And when the last person starts coming by, when your front wheel is about at their bottom bracket, you start moving over so that you make sure that there's no gap forming between you and the last rider. Because if you have to close a gap each time you pull off the front and then get back on the back, it's going to be very tiring and you may have trouble staying on. You're going to use way too much energy. So just pull back nice and smoothly behind that last person and then rest, because you're going to get up to the front pretty soon and have to work again. So it's okay to do more work at the front than what you think you could hold for a long period of time, because you are going to get a rest once you get in the back in line. Next, we're going to talk about rotating pace lines. Rotating pace lines is used in situations in which the group is going very fast and there's not a whole lot of advantage to being in the draft. So if you're going downhill, if you're going really fast with a tailwind, situations in which there's a real equal ability level amongst all the riders, situations where you want to only pull just for a moment and then you rotate off the front and pull off immediately and start going back to the back again. So you're pulling for a very short period of time, but your rest is also for a very short period of time as well. There's constant movement. Oftentimes the person who is having someone pull in front of them will yell clear, so that the person does not get any kind of gap before they move over in front of them. You want to call clear just before the person is actually going to clear your wheel. So they haven't actually cleared it yet, but when they move over, they'll naturally fall in front. You want to make sure there's no gaps and make sure that you stay nice and smooth, and this can be a really, really fast way to ride. And you'll see that we fall into this type of pace line many, many times at camp, and the group can move really fast, and it's a really fun and a really fast way to go. Now let's watch the pros and see how they do it.
This is the rear of the field as we speak. Now going back here, Damien Gaudin. We saw him take a shortcut through the car park with the chain across earlier on. This is George Hincapie driving. George has seen he's got a split and a useful group here. It's time to move it on a little bit. That's his feeling. Tom Bonen has made it as well. So too has Fabian Cancellara and Matti Breschel. So both the champions of Saxo Bank are here.
And Leif Hoste and Thor Hushovd. These are all the big names, Phil, going to the front, being attentive at 77 kilometres to go.
But no Steen de Volder.
Steen de Volder was a little bit further back. He looked to me as if he was riding in around about 30th. Now, that's not the position to be in. This is only an hors d'oeuvre. This is only the curtain raiser. There's still a lot of climbing to go. There's still a lot of racing to go. But Saxo Bank have put out the hammer very early on in this race to toughen it up.
Well, they've done that. There's 10 riders, I think, going clear there, and so De Volder will be in this second group here. He's committed now not to chase down the leaders because he's got his teammate Tom Bonen up there. So De Volder will hope is back in the race. The peloton, those 10 chasers, are now just 52 seconds behind the 4 survivors of the breakaway. We might see the odd 1 or 2 pass by as they pass them.
Now got about 5 kilometres to go, Phil, to the Oder to the Koppenberg, one of the most famous climbs in the race. There was a rumour circulating around the event that because of the conditions the race organisation may take it out. We don't have any definitive information on that, but I think looking at the roads and the fact that it's fairly dry, they will go there. But this is quite amazing to see many of the big favourites of the bike race already in a small fraction off the front end of the pack.
So early in the day, this is Oliver Bonner now, so he'll get passed by. He must be a little bit surprised to see just a handful of riders coming through. There's the big push, and Bowden is saying, come on, let's work together. Hincapie's read the movie. He's a very clever rider when it comes to one-day classic racing.
Well, it's all about what I said a little earlier with George Hincapie, Phil. He's got the age and experience in this race, but he's also got added to that the motivation.
So you'll see some of the riders doing a hand movement in a circular motion with their hand, and that's saying that they want the riders to rotate through and form a rotating pace line. And you'll see that even though the pros are saying to do this, they don't always want to do it. And that hand motion is something you'll see in a Cat 4 race, a Cat 3 race, all the way up to the pro ranks. So that motion with the hand means start a rotating pace line, but you don't always have to do it if you don't think it's in your best interests.
He rides now on Team BMC, and I bet he never thought he'd be in the same peloton as Lance Armstrong ever again, his old friend and teammate of the years gone by. But he is, and Lance could be back in because he's in these chasing groups.
Those are the casualties of the Patersberg, which the riders have just gone over. It's really split the main field, and it's all really started, as I say, every year, and I suppose I'll continue to say that. It all starts with the aggression on the slopes, which is not really a very long climb in itself, but it's what happens with the crosswinds that batters the riders.
Well, I don't think we're seeing the final shape of the chase group just yet, but I can tell you that if it does work out, there's going to be a few shocks. There's still some names up behind here. This little group not quite working as well together as I would expect. I'm just trying to work out who that B-box rider is, because again, they're on such a high, the B-box squad, that they keep on winning race after race, and they've got a man in the break here. Well, taking on food.
There's too many big names in this group, unfortunately, Phil, and they don't want to work together. They've probably not eliminated some of the guys that they wanted to. Hincapie looking over, and he's trying to encourage everybody to work, as is Tom Bonan, who sees this as an advantage to going to the Koppenberg without any of the confusion of having 40 or 50 other riders trying to be in the first 2 or 3 positions.
Well, it's advantage the strong man. That's the way it is in the Ronde van Vlaanderen. And if they can get up the Koppenberg, it's the others who'll have to try and break the peloton to reach them, and it's a lovely position to be in. Keep on searching. There's 1 or 2 riders crossing that gap, but there's still a real pursuit behind. And look at the size of that peloton. It's still about 25, 30 riders strong just now. Breschel looking up. There's a little bit of discussion going on here, and that is not the way we want to go. Is this Leif Hoster here?
Yep.
So Hoster is looking around. They need a big result, Hoster, because the Lotto team, which is now the Omega Pharmacy team, really need a big result. The press are giving them a real big heartache just now.
So that was a situation in which it was clearly an advantage to be in a rotating pace line, but not everybody wanted to do it, so that just did not work out. Now we're going to go to the Tour of California and watch when it works out perfectly, because these guys are really working hard and working well together.
We're with the Tour of California, and we're out on the road here now, and these are the leaders, 7 of them, establishing a lead of 2 minutes and 55 seconds. Now, it's worth noting, Paul, the highest placed man in this breakaway is young Danny Pate. He was 2 minutes 31 behind before the start of the day, and they're leading by 2:55, so he's the virtual leader on the road.
He certainly is. That's only, though, if we were to stop the race now. But unfortunately for Danny Pate, there's still a few kilometres to go, a few miles to go before we get down to the finish. There's the composition of that leading group. Ben Jackmain, aggressive since the start. Stephen Koza, Timothy Johnson, I should say, Adam Hansen, Carl Menzies, Sean Sullivan of Australia, and Danny Pate just at the bottom there. It is, though, still a long way to go. But once again, Bob, it just goes to show that there's a lot of pressure on Team Discovery to chase this down.
It's amazing that they have slipped away from the jersey at the moment. I'm sure there'll be a big, huge chase, not just from the Discovery team, but also the teams of the sprinters that are trying to win a stage. T-Mobile have got to win a stage to have a successful Amgen Tour of California. Obviously, this is their last chance.
Well, there is Danny Pate, and the Slipstream team are having a great tour. They're guided by Jonathan Vaughters, a former Tour de France rider. And in fact, I don't think the team behind Discovery is going to be too worried about this move. Danny Pate, although at the moment, yes, he is the new race leader on the road, they've got plenty of time. We're around about 33 miles in. We're on lap number 5.
So the breakaway is in a rotating pace line, but the field is in a single pace line, because in the breakaway they want to all share the workload, and in the field they can let one person burn themselves out, and that's okay because they're trying to protect the leader of the race.
Here. And there on the front of the main pack are all of the team of Discovery Channel. Don't forget, they've been weakened now by the loss of George Hincapie because of that broken wrist yesterday, but they should still be able to cope here.
Levi Leipheimer, he has to sit back and stay as calm as he can and use his teammates to do all of the pacemaking at the front. But Bob, I was talking to one or two of the riders on other teams just before the start, and they said yesterday Team Discovery really had to dig deep to do that performance and pull the race back for the man in yellow. One
of the most courageous rides we've seen in a long time, coming from George Hincapie, breaking his wrist in a crash early in the stage, chasing throughout the day. He did in the tempo at a level so incredibly stratospheric that the whole peloton was put under pressure, and following the wheels of George Hincapie was not easy for anybody, and he was able to wipe away the advantage of the breakaway. Very dangerous, Stuart O'Grady in the break yesterday, but George Hincapie, even though he had broken his wrist in his crash early in the stage, unbelievable ride by Big George. A lot of courage out on the road.
He must have been in terrific pain, yet it was never evident to us as we watched the pictures yesterday. Yet when George got to the end, he shook his head and held his wrist. It was really very sad, especially for George, because he had a similar situation last year when he crashed in Paris-Roubaix, ripped his shoulder apart, and here he is out again.
Out again, and now wonders whether he's going to ride that famous one-day classic, the Paris-Roubaix, which goes over some nasty cobblestones in the north of France. Bob, looking at the breakaway here, they can't let this breakaway go away again once again because of the position of Danny Pate. But I wonder if all of the work that Team Discovery Channel have had to do here at the Amgen Tour of California, it's actually going to hurt them for later on in the season, because a lot of the big professionals, they're not yet ready for this kind of work.
Incredible amount of pressure on the team. They don't have a sponsor yet. They need big wins, and it's early in the year. This is a very prestigious event. Team Discovery desperate to win the Amgen Tour of California. Tommy Danielson on the front of the peloton, the Durango Kid.
Yes, and he's put in quite a lot of work this week in defense of his leader, Levi Leipheimer. Tommy D, who would have started this race as a candidate for a likely win, has found himself helping somebody else on his team, and there he is, Leipheimer, who doesn't look at all concerned about this breakaway at the moment. But if he continues to gain, and it's not far off getting 3 minutes, I think they will become quite concerned.
Well, on the last day of a race like this, it's also quite interesting to note that he will, I think, Bob, get a little bit of assistance in the latter part of the race, unlike on previous days, because there's a different strategy. There's a lot of the teams of the sprinters. CSC would obviously like JJ Haedo to get himself another win number 3 here, but also Team Rabobank would like to see Graham Brown win. So a lot of stuff is going to happen in the latter part of the race, so they are not going to have to do all of the work themselves.
So here's a situation in which we quickly form a rotating pace line. We've just crested 41 outside of Atascadero, and this is on the Sunday ride, and the group's just separated by a little bit, but as soon as we start grouping together, we immediately go into a rotating pace line. No one has to say anything. Maybe someone does the hand motion, but more than likely people just know that this is a situation where we have a small group of people and we can go fastest because this is slightly downhill if we do a rotating pace line. So you'll see this group is experienced and it's working really well together and moving very quickly. Now the groups behind us are probably also doing the same thing, because at one point our group actually gets a little bit bigger. So the group behind is doing a rotating pace line and working really hard. We're working pretty hard doing a rotating pace line as well, and it's really the fastest way to be able to move on the road here. We've now been riding in this rotating pace line for quite a while, and we're riding smoothly and riding well, but we come to a slight hill. And when you come to a slight hill, it's better to go to a single pace line, because it's very difficult to rotate on the hill. So again, no one says anything. We just start coming to the hill, I pull off here, and Ed pulls through, and instead of pulling through, Ed just keeps pulling at the front for a little while until we crest the hill, because we all know that it's better to stay in line here, let Ed set the pace, and then once we crest the hill, we'll start the rotating pace line again. This is on the Black Mountain day, and it's after a long, hard day of riding, so everybody's pretty tired. We've already climbed Black Mountain, and we've had 229 before that, and we've had the Wero climbs before that, so we're really tired. And we're heading back now as a group into Santa Margarita. So it's a long, pretty straight, flat road, just a few little rollers in it. And what's happening is, we're letting one person pull for quite a while at the front, as long as they feel like they can keep their pace up, and then when they get tired, they come back, and everybody gets to rest really good and long. Now the rider on the left here is actually coming back on the left, which is the tendency to do because the right-hand side of the road is not a lot of road available there. It's on the right-hand side up against the shoulder, and so we tend to pull off to the left. But in this situation, the wind is actually coming from the right. So the group tends to echelon a little bit to the left, and we should pull off to the right. So Liam's taking a really long pull at the front here now. And we're all just going to ride back behind him, and the line kind of moves a little bit, so we're a little bit less tight than we normally are because there's a little more leeway when we're not rotating through quite as fast. But then eventually you're going to see Liam coming through on the right. So he's going to pull as long as he can until he starts getting tired, and then he's going to come pull off to the right and then come down the line to the right. And that's really what he should do in this situation because the wind is coming from the right, and that's going to be the best way to shelter the group as he drops back.